This is part 3 of our lesson on completing the square today. So this question is a communication question, and I would really encourage you to try it yourself first and see if you can figure out which one is correct or not. But I am going to go through it with you, and hopefully you've already thought about it on your own. So it does say 3 different students answered the question below. And it says complete the square, and we have y equals -1x squared minus 12x plus 5. So I have 3 students, student 1, student 2, and student 3. And the first part says which student answered the question correctly, which means the first thing I need to do is figure out who answered this correctly and who answered it incorrectly. So I'm going to use my little card of steps, and I'm going to try to follow student number 1 and see if they followed it correctly. So it says group together the terms with x's and then factor out the number in front of x squared. So they had -1x squared minus 12x plus 5. They put together the ones with x and they took out a -1. So they took out what was in front of x squared. So -1 divided by -1 is +1 x squared. So that's good. And then -12 divided by -1, so -12 divided by -1 actually makes +12, not -12. So I don't think student number 1 is right. All right, let's take a look at student number 2. So group together our x's and factor out the number in front. So they took out the negative. -1 divided by -1 is +1x squared. And then -12 divided by -1 we just said was +12. So this part is good. And then 36. So I'm assuming they went off to the side and they looked for 2 numbers that added to 12. So we're looking for 2 numbers that add to 12 that are the same. So that would be 6 and 6, right? You can divide by 2 to try to figure that out. And then 6 times 6 is 36. So I feel good about the 36. They added 36. They subtracted 36. The 5 is still in the right spot, so that's good. And then on the next step, right, because it said find the 2 numbers, multiply the numbers, add and subtract them, which they did, and then multiply the negative out of the bracket. So they would have multiplied -1 by -36. So -1 times -36 is +36, but they wrote -36. So I think that they are not correct. All right, let's check the last one just to be sure. So group the numbers together that have x's. They took out the -1. They got the plus sign right, so that's good. Right? They came up with the 36 by finding 2 numbers that add to 12 and then multiplying them together. They added and subtracted. They did -1 times -36 is +36, which we just said on the last step. 36 plus 5 is 41. That's good. And then this part here, I would have to actually try to factor myself. Let's see. So x squared plus 12x plus 36. We said the 2 numbers were 6 and 6. So this would be x squared plus 6x plus 6x plus 36. And then if I group, I would take out an x. I would get x plus 6. I would take out a 6. I would get x plus 6. So I would get something times x plus 6. So x plus 6 times x plus 6, which is x plus 6 squared. So I know that's really small and you probably can't read it. That's okay. That was just me checking that I think that this is correct. So I think student number 3 is good. So I'm going to say student number 3 answered it correctly. And then it says, for the other 2 students, explain in words what they did incorrectly. So let's start with student number 1. So student number 1, I circled their problem was when they divided out the -1, they messed up the sign here, right? So they maybe just divided by 1, or maybe they didn't divide at all. So I'm going to say student number 1 What did they do? They incorrectly divided -12 by -1 when factoring out the number in front of x squared. Okay, so they incorrectly divided -12 by -1 when factoring out the number in front of x squared. So I don't know whether they just didn't divide at all or whether they accidentally just messed up their signs. It happens. Okay. And then the other one was student number 2. They did that first part correctly. They came up with the right numbers. Their mistake was when they were multiplying the -36 out of the bracket, they either didn't multiply by -1 or they just made a sign error when they were doing it. So that is student number 2. They incorrectly multiplied -1 by -36. Maybe they forgot to do it. That's a possibility. I'm not really sure. To get -36 instead of +36 when multiplying the negative out of the bracket. So I said they incorrectly multiplied -1 by -36 to get -36 instead of +36 when multiplying the negative out of the bracket. All right, that is it for our lesson today. There are lots of practice questions for you to work on, right, so that you can continue to perfect your completing the square skills. And tomorrow we will be completing the square and graphing. All right, have a great rest of your day.